Hey scholars, good to be back with you. Today I'd like to talk to you about how to install tuners on the neck of an electric guitar. So if you've got an electric guitar you've made, or maybe you have one and you'd like to change the tuners on it, we can set you up here. Now the good news is it's not very hard. If you have just a couple of simple tools and a little bit of patience, anybody can do it. So I'm going to start with this neck. This is one from a inexpensive kit that I'm putting together, and I put a little bit of decoration on it there, so I rubbed a little bit of a finish on it, and I cut the headstock out for a shape I kind of like. So we're going to install these little tuners in it.
Okay, before we get started, let's organize. Job always goes a little easier if you take a moment to set up. So I've obviously got my neck here, got my tuners right there, I've got the little barrel nuts right there, and I've got these little washers that go on it. So I've got a little loop of tape here stuck right to the bench, and have those 6 little number 2 screws stuck right to the tape. I'm here to tell you that if you don't do something like this, you're going to drop a couple, and when you drop them, they tend to roll to the hardest place to get to you. Sometimes you can't find them again. One other thing here, tuners tend to come with really cheap screws, and I mostly throw those away. I replace those with stainless steel number 2 panhead sheet metal screws. And I get these from McMaster Car, but you can get them off of Amazon. And if you buy a box of them, they're pretty cheap. Unit cost is a couple of cents probably. The reason I do that is these are a lot harder to break, and they're stainless, so they'll never rust. Nothing in the world is worse for a guitar maker than to snap one of these things off in the headstock. If you've been living a really pure, worthy life, the gods may smile on you, and only the head of it will snap off. You might still be able to get a pair of pliers on the rest of the screw and back it out. If you're not lucky, it'll break off inside the headstock. Well, your only choice then is to drill around it, pull the thing out, plug the hole, drill a new hole for one of these. So that's not much fun. In order to keep these things from breaking, one of the things you can do is lubricate them. Now when I say lubricate, I don't mean oil. Don't use oil. I use this. This is a block of beeswax. Now if you go to the sewing store near your house, Joann's or someplace, you can buy beeswax because people use it for sewing to put on the thread. It's insultingly expensive there. I bought this off of Amazon. I actually got a bag of them. I got those. And the whole bag costs less than the little bitty piece at the sewing store. But get it wherever you want. If it's not convenient to use beeswax, just about any bar of soap will work. When we go on the road doing this sort of thing, we'll bring back the little bars of soap they have in the hotel room, those little tiny bars of hand soap, and those work okay too. The idea is, though, that you're reducing the friction on the screw as it goes in, and it's a lot less likely to break. So definitely do something like this. So look at the headstock here. This one came already drilled out. Got the holes for the tuners, and it's got these 6 little holes for those screws. And remember, all these are there to do is to keep the tuner from spinning. It doesn't have any load this way. It only goes, the load on the little screw is only this way. So as long as they're in and reasonably tight, they'll do their job just fine. Now if you're working on a headstock that is still in paddle form or doesn't have these little holes drilled in it, you may have to drill it yourself. Just use a 1/16 inch or maybe about 1.5 millimeters drill bit, and put a little piece of tape on it to mark depth so you don't drill through the headstock. You're not in the club until you've drilled through a headstock or two. So this one came already drilled. It was a paddle, so I cut a little shape I liked and finished it all. I've already got the string trees on this one, though it doesn't really matter if they're there or not when you're putting in the tuners. So there's not much to this. We'll just pop them in from the back, put the washer and the barrel nut on them, and put the little screw in there to keep them from spinning. Now some tuners come in sets with different sizes, different heights of tuner post. If you have a set like that, the tall ones go here and the short ones go there. These are all the same height. So all you got to do is drop it in, grab one of these washers, okay, And the washers this one has a front and a back. The front is a little bit shinier. Now mechanically it doesn't really matter, this is just for looks. But you want to put the shiny side up. So drop that over the tuner post and run the little barrel nut in like that. I'm going to run this in and just finger tight right now. We'll tighten them up a little more later. So let's just keep going. So there we are. They're in, but they're just finger tight, and these can still rotate. See, I can still turn that a little bit. That won't do. So we're going to flip it over, and we're going to put those little screws in. So just turn it over. All you got to do is line these things up. So that little lug lines up with the little hole that's drilled in the back of the headstock. Grab a screwdriver. Now I've got two of them here. This is probably the one to use. I use this one. You probably shouldn't, but my son bought this for me when he was just a little dude, and I still have it. So perhaps to sanctify old memories, I always reach for this one. It's always a happy thing to do. And I've got a little tiny screwdriver insert in it, so it works just fine. So just set it in there. Now, remember, we're trying to keep these from binding up too much. So take your beeswax in this and just run it through there. And what you're going to see is there's going to be a little bit of beeswax pressed into the threads. That's what you want. So just put it in there. Get your screwdriver lined up. And you're good to go. And you should be able to just thread that in there. Now remember, when it stops wanting to turn, stop turning. You're not drilling for oil here. In fact, I've got the ratchet set on this one the other way. Let me fix that. So there. Just finger tight. That's about all it wants to do. Now, don't use any kind of power tool for this. You'll rip that thread out just faster than you can even stop it. Remember, this is just there to keep the tuner from spinning as you try to tighten the string. So it just needs to be in there finger tight. If you push it too far, you're going to wind up stripping the wood out, and you don't want to do that. So let's just go ahead and put the rest of those in. Okay, they're all in, and they're pretty well lined up. One thing I did was I turned all the knobs, get that out of the way. I turned all the knobs vertical just to get them out of the way. That's not a bad idea. It just takes a second, and it saves you a little time. So last thing I'm going to do now is I'm going to put my 10mm socket. It's a deep set socket, by the way, so it fits over that. The shallow sockets often won't. Now you can use just about anything to tighten these up. I imagine you could use pliers if you want to and you're careful. One of the things I've got at home that works pretty well is a wrench that's open end on one end and has a ratchet, closed box ratchet on the other end. That works pretty well. But my go-to is pretty much this. It's just a cheap 10mm socket on a T-handle. And we're not trying to drill for oil here. We're just trying to get these tight. Now, these need to be good and tight, but not so much that you crush the wood and not so much that you strip the barrel nuts out, because you strip a barrel nut out, you're pretty much going to have to throw the tuner away and put another one in. So get those good and tight, but not too much, and there we go. And you're done. Throw the neck on, string it up, go play it. So one last note, changes in humidity change the dimensions of wood. Once in a while you'll see one of the headstock here that may have changed shape a little bit, or maybe just out of use. The barrel nuts have loosened up. If there's no strings on it, grab one of these and just go tighten it up. If the washer rattles at all, that means the tuner's loose. It's going to be hard to tune. It might make the guitar rattle too. So use your deep set socket and tighten it up. Or if the strings are still on it, you don't want to pull the strings off, use an open end 10mm wrench and just go up there and give them a little turn. That'll tighten them up. So there you go. Anybody can do this. Just take your time, get it right. Hope this helps. We'll talk to you next time.